Hey folks, welcome back. You guys know exactly where I'm at today on Sawing with Sandy. I'm inside my shop, and this is a place I tend to spend a lot of time in the winter, not just because I'm hiding out from the weather, but because I have that dreaded maintenance to do. You guys know if you own a bunch of equipment like I do, you have to maintain it, because if you don't plan for maintenance, well, maintenance will plan for you, and you guys know what that means. It means breakdown. So what I'm doing today is I'm dealing with one of my favorite pieces of equipment around here, and that is my 2005 Polaris Sportsman. This is a 700 EFI model. This is a great model. This is a great ATV for me. This has been around the block and come back, and I don't ride it recreationally. I simply ride it here on the property, and it does all the heavy lifting. This thing tends to haul things. It pulls trailers, pulls logs. It winches trees out of, brush piles and all kinds of stuff. You've seen it in other videos. But it is now time to do a little bit of maintenance on this because I don't want this thing to break down on me because I want to use it. So what I'm up against today is sort of finishing off some of the fluid changes I've been dealing with on this. And it all comes down to this. You guys know exactly what this is. If you own equipment or even this machine, this is the owner's manual. As I mentioned, I am not the original owner of this thing. This thing I bought off a friend of mine. I don't think he's the original owner either. So this thing's been passed around a few times, hence why I have a internet printed version of the owner's manual. But that's what I'm going off of today. I'm just about done all the fluid change before I tuned in to you guys today. I did the front differential fluid change, which I don't think you'll be able to tell, but it's up in there. And I also did an engine oil change, and that was pretty straightforward. And finally, what I'm doing today is a rear differential fluid change. And here's the rear differential, and you guys can see both the CV axles coming off the edge there. I'm going to change that fluid today. It's quite simple, and thankfully it's simple because the manual tells me exactly what I need to do. If we have a look down here, you guys will see, head on down here, you guys will see here, I'm doing a rear gear case, or as I called it, a differential. I guess gear case is the proper word. Rear gear case lube change. What I'm doing is essentially taking out that's going to be my fill hole, taking out this, which is my drain hole, and I'm just replacing it. What I'm replacing it with, as you guys can see here, is this stuff, so angled drive fluid, and I bought this from Polaris. From what I understand, you might be able to use gear oil, but don't hold me to that. I'm going to use what it suggests in the manual. Went and bought this stuff. This stuff wasn't cheap. Gee, I can't remember. I think it was like 14 bucks Canadian for a liter. So definitely not cheap. I only need 150 milliliters for that rear gear case. So shouldn't take much, but that's what we're up against. Once I'm done that, I think I'm good to go. One other thing I should mention, aside from the front, I think I called it a differential, front gear case, rear gear case, engine oil, I also changed the transmission fluid. And all that's specified in the manual, and you guys can check that out if you have a machine like this or something similar. Before I get down to it though, what I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about was my overall experience with this machine here. You guys have seen it in action multiple times on the channel, and you probably wonder, has it ever broken down on you, or has it ever done anything that you weren't overly happy with? One thing I can tell you was this was my first experience with an ATV, and I had never run Polaris equipment before, but I am very, very happy with this. As you can imagine, a 15-year-old piece of equipment is prone to breakdowns. Knock on wood, despite all the work I've done with this thing, this has not broken down. Now, before I get too much further ahead in my storytelling here, I did just think of something that actually, I guess we'd classify as a breakdown. What it was the trailer hitch. In the first week of ownership, there was a little trailer hitch that sort of bolted on here. I think it had, what did it have? It had 1 1/4 inch size steel tube receiver rather that went into it. That thing bent, I think, in the first hour of me owning it. I hooked up a trailer and put like probably a few 100 pounds of tongue weight on it, and it bent right off. So I fabricated my own, and here it is here. I've got a video for this if you guys want to see me and how I fabricated this. I ended up, doing a little bit of welding and grinding and all that sort of stuff so that I could put a receiver, a 2-inch, that I put in all my other pieces of equipment. anyways, that was one breakdown. The other breakdown, I guess, was a little bit more serious than simply a bent trailer hitch. What it was, it comes down to the gear shifter. This gear shifter here, notice how it's a little bit loose. It's probably related to the linkage here. Well, inside this piece here, and I don't even know what you'd call it off the top of my head, but we'll just zoom in there just a little bit. Maybe you guys can see. Inside this piece, I'll try to remember the word. What there's essentially, it looked like a gear. And the gear, it turned on a shaft when you move the gear select, when you move the shifter. So if you guys can imagine going from high to low to neutral, reverse park, every time you moved it, well, that's going to move the linkage, which in turn is going to move this arm, which is going to move a little sprocket and shaft in there. That's going to help the machine know what it's going to do. However, that sprocket, it actually came disconnected from the shaft, and so every time you'd move this gear select, well, it wasn't doing anything. It wasn't moving that shaft and gear inside that piece there. And so what I ended up having to do, aside from taking all the plastics off, I had to remove this piece right here where my finger is, and I'll try to remember the name. And I also had to remove all these bolts here and take essentially this side of that off. If I look here, I don't know if that's the transmission or not, but I'll figure out the word. But I had to take that apart, and I had to do a little bit of welding. You don't have to do welding, however. I'm a little bit tight in the pocketbook. I simply took that piece off, that bolts out, that whole side cover off, and I welded the shaft back onto the sprocket and put it back, and it's worked ever since. I'm sure I could have gone to my Polaris dealer and bought that piece, but as I mentioned, my wallet's a little tight. Aside from that, though, this thing has started every single time in every single weather condition, and boy, it's been put to work. So that's my 2 cents on this thing. It's definitely a workhorse, definitely something that I would buy again if I had to. Anyways, let's get down to work here. I got to stop talking. I got lots of maintenance to do. So let's start off with the first step, and that'll be the rear gear case. Here we go. All right, I just cranked it up just a little bit because it's supposed to be level when I drain the oil and put new oil in here. Let's get that to work. Here's my little trouble light. Anyways, I'm going to take out well, first off, I'm going to take out the fluid out of the bottom. This is drive angle fluid, as I showed you a moment ago, 150 milliliters. I'm going to take that out the bottom with my catch pan, and then we'll go ahead and refill it. So it's all caked up with mud in here. Guess if I clean this thing, it'd be a little better. Well, my guess with sockets work. Still mud in there. Get out of there. That mud's been in there since prehistoric times, I swear. Oh yeah, that's it right there. Okay. Let's get the old catch pan back here. You not quite loose enough. Just caked in there. Did I mention I do work with this thing and drive her everywhere? Well, this is the result. Okay, almost. Come on. Ugh, that is some smelly stuff, I tell you. Shouldn't be much in there. Okay, let's let that go. Got Kind of some gooey stuff here. Don't see any big metal pieces on the end. I guess that's a bonus. There should be. Now I know some of you guys are going to say, okay, the manual says put a new, what do you call this? Just a washer, sealing washer on, and let's just pretend I did, okay? Whether I did or not, you guys can decide. Okay, there we go. So, what's it say for filling? It says I'm going to fill it just to the bottom of the fill plug hole, bottom of the threads. So that's not very precise, 150 milliliters. And if anyone from Polaris is out there watching and maybe you designed this bottle, please, please, please put the see-through window on the side with the numbers so guys like myself can sort of estimate how much I've actually poured in. I've done before where I've poured stuff in thinking it was a certain amount, and lo and behold, I was nowhere close. So try to put it on the side for me, really, really help. Otherwise, I got to get a measuring cup and all that sort of stuff. Anyways, guess my hand had grease on it. Let's get back to work. The oil's not quite drained out of here, so I'm just going to tell you about a little trick I use sometimes when I need to figure out a measurement, so a certain volume, but I don't have a measuring cup handy, or as is the case with that Polaris oil container, doesn't have the actual see-through window on the side with the volume measurements. What I actually use is I take an old can, or in this case half of a bottle, and let's say I needed 200 milliliters of a certain oil. Well, if I don't have a measuring cup to pour out or measure out 200 milliliters, I'll simply go and get a measuring cup from the house. Now, I don't want to put engine oil in it. Will create a whole bunch of problems we're not going to discuss, but I'm going to take that measuring cup from the house and I'm going to fill it up with 200 milliliters of water. I'm then going to take that volume and pour it into an empty container like this, and wherever it comes up to, and let's just assume it came up, part way. Well, I just make a mark with a marker on my container, and then I dump out the water and I dry it out well. And now I know if I come back to my shop, I can essentially fill this up with oil up to that line, and it'll be within reason approximately that same volume. You don't want to shear this thing off. You'll have a pretty bad day in that case. It calls for a certain torque. I can't remember what it is. I think we're going to torque it to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5-finger torque settings. So there we go. Okay, time to refill. If I had my air compressor hooked up, I'd go grab that. Okay, good enough. Let's get her on right there. Okay, grab the oil. So, got my Polaris angle drive fluid here. That's what they call for in the manual. I tend to use this just to fill things up. It's a piece of garden hose, and I just put my funnel into it, just making sure it's nice and clean. And yeah, so we're just filling this up as it says in the manual to the bottom of the threads there on the fill hole. So we'll get this in there first. And it's only 150 milliliters, which is not much at all. So probably what's going to end up happening, if experience has taught me anything, I'm going to start pouring it. I'm going to approximate 150 milliliters. And it'll be close, but it'll be too much. And then it'll start pouring out the fill hole when I pull out the funnel. Okay. Look at that stuff. All right, 150 milliliters. That's my best approximation. Basically, I'm just letting it go in. Then I'm going to pull this out. And I would prefer to overfill it just a little so it drains itself until it's at that bottom of the thread level. Must be cold out here. That stuff's like molasses right now. All right, let's remove this and see how close we were. Get a little light in here. Oh, we're real close. No, that's almost there. Like I would say it's practically there, but we're just gonna just a touch more. Get in there. Where'd that oil go? Just a smidgen. I think we're gonna call that good right there. Once that finally gets down there. That's gonna last me a while. Barely used any of that. Still probably was about $3 worth of oil I poured in there, despite it being 150 mils. Okay, that's it. Let's let that drain, then we'll put the plug back in and call it good. Okay, and once again, this will be a 5-finger torque setting. Truth of the matter is I don't have my torque wrench here at the shop. I'll torque that up later, I suppose, if I actually get to it. Anyways, there we go. That's the Gearcase oil change. I think the last thing we're going to do here, while I'm here, might as well show you guys how to, how to put on my fabricated trailer hitch here. Just so you guys understand, I took 2 nuts off here that were on here already from the factory. I just took them off and I utilized those bolts in order to provide an attachment point. I also took off the stock trailer hitch that had bent, right out of shape. All I had to do was I had to drill a hole here and a hole here. These pieces of steel were already sticking out, so I drilled a hole down there. And then what I ended up doing is, if you guys can see this piece of steel here, it's 2x2 piece of steel. This is just a standard receiver that you guys can get from a place like, well, I got it from Princess Auto, which I think is equivalent to your Harbor Freight if you're from the US. I took that piece and then I welded on a piece of angle iron, you guys can see on the bottom. And I also went ahead and welded on a piece of tubular steel here, cut it on a bit of an angle so I could get a bolt hole in there, a hole for a bolt. And more or less that's how it goes on. You guys see here? It is held on with 2 bolts on the top, and then the 2 holes I drilled, I just dropped those bolts through there, and then that's how that's held on. And that's been on there since, well, gee, that's been on there for years now, and it's pulled a heck of a lot of weight. It's actually pulled my, pretty big boat as well, just around the yard, and big firewood trailers and all that sort of thing. So definitely holds up. Anyways, I'm just going to bolt that on, but that'll be that. Snap. I'm just kidding. Tight is tight. Okay. Well, guys, that's it. I have been working away on getting the rear gear case oil all changed out, and I went ahead and put my hitch on. I think I'm good to go. So let's get out of here. I think for now, we have everything. Whoa, my legs are a little numb. I think we have everything we need to do on the Polaris all buttoned up. And so I've got all the fluids changed. I think it's ready to rock again. I'm going to take this thing out to the sawmill or out to the bush. Who knows what I'm going to be doing next with this, but it's certainly ready to go. Regardless of whether you guys are brand new here or not, I welcome you. And if you are brand new, I would encourage you to hit the subscribe button. And for everyone, please give me that thumbs up, and see all you guys next time.